Thank you, Suresh. Ashok Krishna with Chevron, obviously in the fossil fuel business. So, just open declaration. No, I think just like everyone else around the globe, people in the energy business are just as concerned about the climate change issues, producing CO2 and methane, as we do with the energy we create. So we're committed to reducing those climate changing gases, but in a way that's sustainable, in a way that allows for global economy to grow. As you probably all know, the demand for energy is going to double over the next 20 years. So how do you create that energy in a manner that allows people to still grow, the economies, particularly in the Asian economies, to grow while managing this climate change issue? If given an opportunity, I'll talk a bit more about what specifically we're doing, but I think the issue really is for the next couple of decades, we'll have to deal with fossil fuels. And the question is, how do you deal with it? How do you phase it out in a manner that it lets you get to where you need to get to while the world still grows and depends on the energy that it needs?
Thank you.
Shri Kumar, besides being the director of the biotechnology enterprises, I'm also the chairman of a startup company incubator right out of this campus. It's on biofuels, but from a very different perspective. It's all from IIT Madras alumni, about 6 of them who've got together to do this company. We grow seaweeds on the ocean, do agriculture on the ocean, and convert it to biofuel. So the good news, I think, is that there is enough energy that hits this Earth, planet Earth, from the sun to more than power our needs, even when we're a world of 10 billion, okay? So that's the good news. The bad news is how do we pick it up and convert it into useful and storable fuel? It's not impossible, but I think there is hope. The most important thing, however, is that we have become aware that there is a CO2 cliff, if I may use the word, and we're racing towards that, okay? And there's a lot of positive awareness among the stakeholders that some people say, yes, we have to reduce them, reduce our emissions. Some people say we have to capture our emissions, and there are some other people who are looking to say, okay, fine, what else can we do to now generate the extra energy that the world now needs to continue to be prosperous and happy? Because energy is such a fundamental requirement of human existence that you can't get away from it. So we'll share more about that later.
Professor Kolar.
I am Ajit Kolar, professor in Mechanical Engineering Department. I work in the area of energy. In particular, I emphasize the importance of coal for India for the next 50 years at least. I'm on the TIFAC committee for 2035 Energy Vision India. I'm looking at the coal and the power sector. I'm also the founder convener, if I may be permitted to say so, of the IIT Madras Energy Forum, which is a student faculty initiative to generate awareness about the importance of energy and environment in IIT Madras and elsewhere. In terms of the energy situation, all of us know it's extremely critical. All our calculations show that 2050 will be still getting our electricity, especially 50% of that from the fossil fuels, coal and gas definitely. There is nothing like a sustainable energy source or a sustainable energy technology. This word sustainability has to be properly defined. We should have sustainable energy systems which look at energy from the source to the final utilization in terms of the lifestyles. So we can meet the requirements of the future if we think in terms of sustainable energy systems where all forms of energy are going to be utilized with proper technologies, and we also look at sustainable lifestyles. This entire spectrum of energy source to lifestyles is extremely important for us to be hopeful about meeting our energy and climate situations in the next 50 to 60 years. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sadashiv. I'm a partner at Ernst & Young Singapore. I had a practice called the Climate Change and Sustainability Services practice, and my beat, if you call it, is ASEAN, the 10 country member grouping. And I'm based in Singapore for many, many years. So I think I should be sticking to what I know best. Talking of this question, the Mayan prophecy, I was not a great believer in that, but I'm surely a believer in the fact that we are racing towards Armageddon, which means today the carbon dioxide concentration is somewhere around, according to the Interparliamentary Committee on Climate Change, IPCC, which is a scientific-based organization, we are at 380 parts per million. As we race towards 500 parts per million, we are racing towards irreversible destruction. Okay? And that is entirely possible according to many, many studies. That's likely to even happen by the end of the century, which is just about 85 years away. Okay? That means this will happen within the lifetime of our children and our grandchildren. So we are talking about a serious, really serious situation here, which unfortunately the political leaders don't seem to be taking full cognizance of, though they know the impact. Now, let's talk of the impact. It's a bit of a, not a very good news. At least in my part of the world, which is Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, including, if you take Australasia, something close to anywhere between 60% to 80% of the population lives along the coast. Okay? With a 2-degree rise in temperature, well, actually a 1-degree rise in temperature, about 50% of the population is going to go underwater, or it's going to be seriously affected. The livelihoods are going to be seriously affected, and they'll start impinging inland. Okay? You know that 2 years ago, the Maldivian government had a cabinet meeting underwater, just to underscore that the Maldives is going to vanish if the current rate of fossil sort of fuel burning and carbon dioxide accumulation is going to take place. So the message is very clear. So the question is, how much more of fossil fuel can we responsibly burn? Pretty much zero. The next question is, what is available to us? As most of my eminent co-panelists say, there is enough of other energy sources. Most commonly, biomass is underutilized. I find, of course, good news is that countries like Malaysia, of course India, some of the big China, etc., are moving in the direction, and other renewable energy sources. So to answer your question, I think the Mayan prophecy could come about maybe a few years later if we don't act responsibly. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
My name is Ajay Narayan, and I'm actually working with the IFC, which is the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank. So in reflecting what was said, I think the first message I would have is that I think naval architecture should be promoted at IIT Madras, because we're going to need boats. But on a more serious vein, I think the bigger problem is, you mentioned that there needs to be hope.
Yeah.
I think too much hope leads to a sense of complacency. I kind of agree that the situation is not very rosy or positive, right? So you can't expect that there's going to be a magic solution which a bunch of panelists, however distinguished they might be, will kind of come up with. I think the problem is, I don't know what the solutions are. I think the energy consumption is way out of whack. The lifestyles are fundamentally driven by, more consumption, which essentially means more consumption of energy. Each one of us sitting in this room in some way, including the World Bank and IFC and everyone else, is somewhere contributing to this. So I think we need to be a little fearful, other than building boats to kind of escape when we eventually have the floods. I don't see the Mayan prophecy as being something which is literal, but it's more metaphorical. I see it also as something which we also always need to keep in the back of our minds. And I kind of relate to what the first panelist said, is it has to start with each one of us individually. What are the choices we're making individually? And that's where it comes down to. I think that the problem I see in my work is there are a huge bunch of technologies which are very promising. I can't find entrepreneurs who are actually willing to set it up and do it. I can't find policies which are actually working to make these technologies happen. I can't see financiers willing to finance these. So these remain in the realm of discussions while the world chugs on, emitting CO2.
Thank you, Ajay. My name is Shivaraman. I run a company called Shriram EPC. We also promoted a company called Orient Green Power, which is at 500 megawatts, believe it or not, the largest renewable utility in India, which is sad. I mean, for a country like India to say that a 500 megawatt renewable company is large is disastrous, but that is what it is. We are trying to make money as a business. We didn't get into renewables because we wanted to save the world. We build wind turbines, we build biomass plants. We didn't get into those businesses in order to save the world. We got into those businesses because we felt these were businesses that could make sense in the long run. Incidentally, if it helps to save the world, okay, fine, great. But I agree with Ajay. There are a couple of things that we need to do as a community, as a nation, and probably as a world, which is policy. I think there is enough entrepreneurship within this room and within this, definitely within India and within the world, to pick up pretty much any idea which makes sense and run with it, as long as the environment is conducive for that. So if we want to look at renewables or any carbon neutral, carbon positive development on the energy space, the fundamental change that has to come is in regulation, is in government. And I think all of us, I think we have a couple of IAS people from my batch in the audience, but I think we need to really push the government to get something done. I think if the policy is in place, there is enough money and enough brain power in the world. But the speed at which things are happening, the speed at which policy is changing, I'm scared. I am reasonably certain that my son is going to have a pretty tough time when he grows up. Thank you.
So it seems like the panel is equally divided. We've had some very positive outlooks that it's possible really to avoid disaster and destruction, as long as we are aware of our load on the earth and look at holistic system-wide type solutions and recognize that each of us is a little device that is generating CO2 emissions and consuming a lot of energy as we go. We've also heard that the Mayan prophecy was possibly not so far off. I believe you said it's more of a metaphorical in nature, and maybe the exact date was not precise. But there is a possibility that if we don't change our way of thinking, way of living, that we should reach there in the near future. So the next question I have is some of the answers to this question already came out in this round of discussion, but nevertheless I'm going to ask this. So if you had to choose between king coal and windmills, where would you put your money, or what do you foretell for the future? King coal or windmills?
Are those the only two choices I have?
So I think broadly people are going to say you need a portfolio of solutions. It's not going to be one or the other. But I just want to force you, if you were to invest all your money on one of these things, which would it be?
I work with people in Rajasthan, in the villages of Rajasthan, and I work with the people who are literally suffering from this. And they are really the majority on the planet. 2/3 of the planet are in that state. They really don't have much access to any energy. Okay? They're energy poor. And so we are in the top 1/3. And rather than looking at whether to take it from this or that, we need to be looking at what can we sacrifice? How much can we give up so that they have access to something better? Okay? So I would rather look at it that way, And to me, climate change is a symptom of a much larger problem. And the larger problem is a completely unsustainable lifestyle. Okay? And altruism is the only thing that's sustainable, not self-interest.